There's a few people that have not muted themselves yet. So if you could mute yourself, if you can't figure out how to do that, on the right-hand side of your screen, there should be an attendees section, and you can click on yourself. If there's a green phone beside your name or a green microphone beside your name, you are not muted. So if you can just mute yourself so we don't have any background noise in the background. Just some other housekeeping. If you want to ask any questions, Tim and I'll be taking questions throughout the presentation. So you can just click on the chat feature and enter your questions, and we'll respond to it, and we'll also be questions at the end. Dana, can I have the next slide, please? So thank you again. So we hope, I should also say this is our first APPI webinar, so hopefully this works out and we can have many webinars in the future for our CPL units. So we hope that this session will provide clarity on the awards eligibility, the difference between excellence and merit, the evaluation criteria, and the submission requirements. A summary of the webinar will be posted on the website for members to review at a later time. So the Planning Awards is not a competition. Rather, everyone that submits an award could win. The awards committee reviews each submission individually against the evaluation criteria to determine if it is eligible for award. The awards committee is made up of APPI members from the public and private sector from various regions, so that is a group that is representative of the overall membership. Can I have the next slide, please? So to jump right into awards eligibility, so there's a number of eligibility considerations. So the first is the project or the plan must have been prepared under the direction and or with substantive involvement of an APPI member. This does not mean that an APPI member simply signs off on the submission. It means that an APPI member has overseen the project, was involved in the approval process of the project, or was completely responsible for the project. The project or plan must apply to a community, resource, or a planning process located within the boundaries of APPI, being Alberta, Northwest Territories, or Nunavut. This third consideration is always the most difficult for people to understand, and I think what we receive the most questions on. So the plan or project must have been accepted, implemented, or built within the calendar years of 2015, 2016, or by the end of the year 2017. One tip that we can provide in this criteria is that your plan may have been approved as you will, but if you apply in the second or third year after it has been approved and wait for award, you will be able to demonstrate more of the awards criteria. For example, a project that is approved in December 2017 may not have had long enough time to be implemented, whereas a project approved in 2015 has had significant time for implementation, and the results of that project or plan can be demonstrated in the submission. The fourth criteria is that the project or plan must be submitted for one category and only once, unless the project has been substantially added to or has completed additional phase. For example, we had a development project a few years ago that was approved at least 10 years prior to the submission. However, the project added an additional phase, and it could be demonstrated that it had been substantially added to. In essence, the plan did not sit on the shelf, and the submitter could clearly demonstrate how the project had been added to within the 3 years defined in the award period. And can we have the next slide? And I'll pass it over to Tim to explain the awards criteria.
Okay, good morning, everyone. There are 5 categories for the awards. Just a note, of course, for the awards categories and also the criteria, which I'll be covering off, it is in detail on the website. I'm going to just take a moment here to highlight some of the key pieces. So the first awards category I'd like to cover off is the comprehensive and policy plan. And this would include a strategic long-range policy for a municipality or multiple municipalities. So for example, statutory plans like an area structure plan or intermunicipal plans, or it could include policy plans addressing housing or economic development, for example. One of the recent examples in the last 5 years was evolving infill, the City of Edmonton project, to give you a taste of submissions. And given the nature of our work, most submissions are in this category. So in the last 5 years, 13 awards have been handed out in this category. On to design plan category. This would include a physical land use plan or project focusing on design elements for a specific site or a larger area. So for example, site design plans, parkland area, or a site of historical importance. And one of the recent award winners was the Brad Creek Revitalization Plan by Rocky View County. So this is the second most popular category, if I can put it that way, for submissions. And in the last 5 years, there have been 4 awards in this category. On to special study category. This would include an original or outstanding study or report that distinguishes itself through exceptional methods and findings. These works would provide solutions of value to the profession, the livability of communities, or the sustainability of resources. And in the last 5 years, there have been 5 awards in this category. And I'm just turning my page here to get to the example. One, for example, is the Heritage Preservation Program by the City of Lacombe. The fourth category, emerging technology. This would include a planning project or program which demonstrates significant advances in the use of technology to assist planning processes. So the example here is PD Map. It was a GIS type system developed by the City of Calgary. And in the last 5 years, it was the only award that we have presented in this category. The last category, the educational category, these will include projects or programs that are intended for use within or outside the planning profession to educate the public about how planning makes a difference. So an example was, one of the award winners was the Parklandia project, prepared by Parkland County for school use and education. So in the last 5 years, there have been last 5 years have been 2 awards made in this category. And not seeing any questions just yet on our chat. So if we can go to the next slide. So yes, let's take a moment just to chat about excellence versus merit. What's the difference between these two? This is always a bit of a curiosity. So excellence really is a project or submission that must be outstanding and distinguished, and it must demonstrate extraordinary merits in many, if not all, of the evaluation criteria, which I will cover off shortly. As opposed to a merit award, which would be deemed to be a great submission or very good and demonstrate value in any one or number of the evaluation criteria. So the difference between a submission deserving of excellence as compared to merit lies in how well the evaluation criteria are met. There is no science to this. For any year, there are the number, variety, and quality of the submissions varies, and it's kind of like a box of chocolates, as Forrest Gump would say. And we would, as a panel, evaluation panel, take those applications and apply the criteria to decide whether or not the submission is meritorious or of excellent quality. The submissions and doing these evaluations is kind of akin to doing a review of an RFP. You start wading through them, and then one just kind of hits you, or not. And of course, there is exchange and debate amongst the panel members on the qualities of each application. So in the last 5 years, there have only been 4 awards for excellence, and which is an indication that we do have a high standard in terms of award making or granting an excellence to a submission. And I'm wondering if we can go on to the next slide. So there's two slides here involved in the awards evaluation criteria. The first three here, as noted on the slide, is the planning process, originality, and transferability. For each criterion, the evaluation and scoring is guided by whether or not the submission meets the exemplary test, that is, best practice qualities. So it's worth pointing out that the transferability, results, and impact of a submission will factor in as much as does a submission that is impeccable with regard to originality, innovation, or process. So there is a reason that submissions qualify within a 3-year duration. Aaron had touched on this earlier. In terms of demonstrating application. So the point is, you don't want to have a half-baked submission, is the strong advice, that would otherwise be meritorious or have potential for that. And if it was given a little bit more time, it could be successful in terms of an award. So just a reminder on that in terms of the application rules. You can only submit an application once, and so you want to be mindful of your timing in that regard. In terms of planning process, just an observation, process is as important as the final product, so I encourage you to be mindful of sound methodology and inclusiveness. And I'm just going to go through the criteria now in a brief way. In terms of originality, innovation, creativity, outstanding application, submissions that seem to do well here stand out by having distinctive and substantive qualities that really add to the profession's body of work. So typically, if the submission generates an aha moment when you look at it, then it's working. In terms of transferability, applicability of the submission or its instructive qualities for others to adopt readily is very much valued. So again, this is the notion about applying the profession's new body of work. Maybe we can go on to the next slide. With regard to the results criterion, question is, does the submission, does the meat of the submission, that is the substantive piece, achieve the intentions as claimed in the introduction or conclusion? So really the point that's being made here in my observation is that, does the submission walk the talk? And it's got to be more than just a really good introduction and conclusion. In terms of the significance impacts criterion, the question is, does the submission advance the profession? And just an observation in terms of whether or not you think you should be making an application. Certainly you want to address that question. But in our day-to-day work, it's not necessary for everyone to reinvent the wheel. Copying best practice is considered flattery. So in terms of advancing the profession. Clarity of presentation. I'm sure we would agree that the well thought through, organized, and understandable presentation of the subject matter is worthy. The written word combined with illustrations and exhibits that's clearly presented is always a winner. Glossy, gloss does matter, I guess, is the point I want to make, but doesn't necessarily win you awards, is the suggestion I'd like to make there. So I'm not seeing any questions up just yet on our chat, but that rounds out the discussion around the awards distinguishing between the excellence and merit award and also the criteria.
Can we have the next slide, Dana? Thank you. Thanks, Tim. So just to talk about the actual and the review by the awards committee, the calls for submissions for this year will be posted in January with a deadline to submit by the end of April. So in the years past, the committee has requested 5 hard copies, but we have moved into the times and we went paperless. So there's 1 electronic copy on a disk or a download that must be provided to the APPI office. So this will include that complete and signed application form. This is where the APPI member who the project or plan was prepared under will sign off on the project and the submission. A signed covering letter, which confirms the category the submission is being made, that the eligibility requirements are met, and it summarizes the merits of the project and the role of the APPI members. So this letter is to be no more than 2 pages, and this letter combined with the next submission of how you demonstrate and meet the evaluation criteria. So you have 5 pages total basically to present your award and why you should be considered for award, and basically defend it to the awards criteria, to the awards committee. And while the awards committee reads all of the projects or plans, simply reading the plan may not provide the insight. For example, if you used a new public participation method or a different way of doing things, the project of just reading the plan may not demonstrate that. So make sure you highlight all of those things in your 5-page submission. The 4th is a copy of the actual plan along with any documents, supportive illustrative materials, pictures, those types of things. A certificate that the client's aware. So in the case of a municipality, that could be from mayor and council or the director of planning. And in the case of a private firm submitting, that could be your client signing off that they're aware of the submission. And then number 6 for housekeeping, we do ask that you name the electronic file according to the submission form. That's just for ease of tracking when we get a number of submissions. So we're still taking questions on the right-hand side in your chat area if you'd like to ask any questions or questions of clarity. And if we can move on to the next slide, Dana, please. So our awards are presented at our annual conference. This year's will be held in Kananaskis, so get ready for that. Just to plug for the conference this year, our conference committee is doing lots of work. You'll see call for proposals coming out, so start getting ready because I think it's going to shape up to be a really great conference in Kananaskis. The awards will be presented on October the 1st, and the award winners are featured on the APPI website and in a media release. New this year is a 90-second PowerPoint. We have changed this requirement this year, and it's played for the audience at the awards luncheon, and you can explain your award and have a little bit of bragging rights amongst all of your peers. And if I could just have the next slide, please, Dana. So we're just going into the question and answers if there are any specific. We do want to thank everyone for participating. We do hope to have more webinars for CPL units in the future. So if anyone has any topics that they would like to present to the membership or ideas on topics, please contact the APPI office. And just a reminder, this session is eligible for CPL units. So if you need additional CPL units or you have yet to log your CPL units for 2017, please log your CPL units. You can use this webinar as you don't want to be struck from the membership or hear from the APPI office for not having your mandatory learning units. And then we'd be happy to take any questions, which can be typed into the chat feature to the right of your screen. And if there's anything else, we will, as we said, post this online, and there can be follow-up questions if you like, but happy to take any questions that anyone has right now. I don't have any good jokes, so I hope somebody has a good question. So we just had a question in from Beth. How about a bit more what makes the difference between merit and excellence, a story or two? So I guess I can go first. I think we've seen in the past something that really highlights all of those all of the evaluation criteria. So I know in the past, the municipal development plan for the regional municipality with Buffalo won an excellence award. And that was because they really did hit all of the criteria. It was a different format of their MDP. It looked different. It felt different. It really had that aha moment, as Tim mentioned before. Tim, another example maybe?
Well, the one I'm thinking of is the Edmonton Sign Museum, which you know, was unique in terms of its work, but it also had a demonstration component attached to it as well. It was actually illustrated how the signs were to be affixed to the buildings on the street and be exposed to the street rather. And that was just a very unique project. It was caught your attention right away. Was I think advancing the profession in terms of you know, ways of you know, doing some heritage work on signage, but also in terms of actually dressing up a street a little bit in terms of the urban design element, and the fact that again it did have some demonstration attached to it was made it worthy.
So just I'll quickly answer Beth's question about the Wood Buffalo MDP. The aha moment was the public participation model that was used, in that they actually had over 15,000 engagements with residents during that stage. So that was really the design of the public participation that was used for Wood Buffalo. So we'll go to Claire's question. Are all evaluation criteria weighted equally, or is more weight given to certain criteria? Tim, did you want to?
Yeah, let me just pull something out here. There are different weightings. And just give me a moment here to grab an example. So if I just want to do a run through here, got your pencils out. Planning process is all of 100, of course, is 20. Originality, etc., is 20. Transferability is 15, and results is 20. Significance / impacts is 15, and then clarity is 10. So back to a point I was making earlier about applicability, and Aaron's made this point too. When you start adding up some of those numbers, I mean, the front end, the planning process, originality, some of the experience has been is that people will make submissions that clearly have some outstanding qualities in that area, but it's not clear what the transferability, results, impact is. So part of the suggestion is to not be so eager just to make a submission. If, for example, this year it was approved in December of 2017 and you're making application, you may want to wait a year in terms of being able to really demonstrate the transferability, results, and impacts, because that adds up to, there's 35, 45, 50 points right there in terms of some of those components. So I hope that's helpful for people to understand.
So I think that answers Tyson's question, that yes, it is better to wait if you have something approved recently in 2017. It is better to wait, like Tim says, to make up those criteria. The weighting, Tara, to answer your question, I believe it is included in the submission, but if it isn't, we will make sure that this year that weighting criteria is included in the submission, so you can see where to really spend your 5 pages, I guess. Tim, any comments on about weighting be shared, or Tara's question?
No, I mean, I think the transparency there is fine. I mean, I think it maybe just helps to support the observations we're making in terms of suggestions to those who may be contemplating making submissions or have done submissions in the past, and may answer some questions certainly for how submissions may have been handled in the past. But for going forward, I think it would be beneficial.
So Tim, another question from Tara for you. What differentiates between a special plan and a special study?
All right.
Good one, Tara.
So
You
we'll
always have the tough questions.
Yeah, and I know it's a tough one. I'm going to have to get the criteria out here. So allow me to fumble through this. So you said
special plan and special study.
Yeah, we've got a special study category. So it's, yes, study / report is the way it reads in the category. You know, terminology is a funny thing. You know, people, you know, may apply the word plan or study depending on their own circumstance. So I'm not really sure how to answer that question. Let me just look at the detail here.
Tara, I'm seeing special study in our categories, but not special plan. Wondering if you can provide more clarity on your question, maybe why Tim's looking for additional.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Tara. Can you guys hear me?
Tara.
I'll just chime in. I'm pretty sure what we generated this question at our office based on what the call for submissions looked like, and that there was 2 of these terms used. So we were just trying to understand if a special plan was different than a special study, but it sounds like maybe that was just like an extra word thrown in there and it's not a big deal. But if it's more than that, that's where we were trying to get that understanding. I can go and look online as well while Tim's looking as well.
So
well,
I think you're. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was just going to say, not sure. It does say a special plan under the comprehensive and policy category. So a special plan which addresses the environment, housing, economic development, recreation, etc. But that's under the comprehensive and policy plan category. So going back to special study category, I mean, it does talk about an original or clearly outstanding study / report. So maybe what we need to do to help here is maybe clarify a little bit more what those would include. But certainly as you read on, it talks about approaches of value to the planning profession, the livability of communities, or sustainability of resources. Maybe a little bit ambiguous there, but certainly drawing distinction between a special plan as identified in the comprehensive and policy plan category and special study areas. There are 2 different things there, and it seems like we've covered it off in terms of the categories.
So we can work too.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just pulling it up now. So basically under categories, you have comprehensive and policy plan, and the second bullet says a special plan which addresses. And then if you go 3 bullets down, it's special study, which is an original or clear outstanding study based on sound research and analysis. It's like, well, okay, what are those differences? Yeah, maybe the first one is it's comprehensive and it's a policy plan. That's where we were just a bit unsure. So it sounds like, Tim, with some additional detail that might get clearer. The other thing might be worth, I'm just on the APPI website looking up awards and recognition, and it shows what the awards for planning merit are, and yeah, it shows the awards for planning merit, but it doesn't. It just lists the winner, but it doesn't tell under what category. Oh, sorry. Yes, it does. My apologies. Design plan. Yeah, it does say under which category. Okay, I'm just assuming that they're all under there then. Okay, never mind then.
Yeah. Yeah, but just to your point, I think we'll have a look at the special study description there and perhaps tweak it to make it a little bit more clear and differentiate between that special study plan that's mentioned under comprehensive and policy plan versus the special study. So thank you for that.
Next question from Tyson. So is the submitter able to get any feedback or scoring on a submission once it has been accepted and evaluated? When I was the awards committee chair, what we did is if you wanted to follow up question, we would provide that to you. If you would like, we can talk to you about the submission and what the evaluation criteria or what the evaluation committee felt. Tim, I believe The process is the same now, that if the submitter asks for additional information, we will provide.
That's right. And James, last year, I think we spent a little bit more time the last couple of years actually looking at that to make sure that people were comfortable with if they did inquire, they were comfortable with decisions and results.
From Yanish, would you consider a separate category for rural planning projects? Tim, I would put that one to you.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good one, Yanish. We have had some discussion about that in recent years, because when you look at the profile of the award winners, I just want to make an observation, and please don't take it as fact, but there seems to be a little bit of weighting here towards the larger centers and those with wherewithal to make applications for one, but also in terms of their thresholds in terms of the where they're at in the planning area. So I can't remember the application exactly, but I remember there was one. It was a county. Yanish, maybe it was yours, but they felt that they did something really innovative in terms of coming up with a solution for wastewater management in an industrial area. We fully understood why the application was made. I guess in terms of advancing the profession, it didn't seem to have the quality attached to it that would do that or meet that test, I guess. So we have been thinking about how we can accommodate county rural applications. I am sympathetic personally to trying to figure out how we can do that.
So I guess the reason, I'm raising this question is what I found historically, sometimes it's really about the choice of the project, because what really ends up happening is if you have a really good project itself in a very urban context or whatever, you can do really progressive, planning principles that can be incorporated into a winning, document. The challenges sometimes working with rural municipalities are, you start with really good planning principles, and by the time, you work through a 1 year, 2 year process with rural councils, a lot of documents get watered down. So your intentions might be really good in terms of creating a, progressive policy, but in reality, maybe through the whole consultation process, you're just not there. And as a planner that sometimes, what ends up getting approved is not where you started, but that's how the planning is. So I don't know, so when a third person looks at it, they don't have, or, people choosing these, or evaluating these awards, they don't know that whole process, what has happened. So I don't know, that's why I just felt like asking that question.
Okay. Well, just an observation that I don't know that the panel would be able to get around that issue anyhow in terms of having the background, but certainly understanding the process that you have and you do a lot of county rural work, I know. Understanding some of the hurdles is helpful. Let me just say that I think that there's some work to be done here, because recognize that you used the word progressive. I was talking about advancing the body of work for the profession. I think we need to give a little thought to how we can acknowledge that rural county circumstances different from many of the urbanized areas.
So we will look into it some more. Thanks for that question, Yanish. Any other questions? Just one more. First, follow up on my first question. Is it possible to submit a plan that was approved by council a number of years ago, but is not being implemented to now? For example, an ASP that was approved 10 years ago, but was not implemented and development started until 2017. So that would fall under that the plan has been substantially added to or changed since you did that. So I would say yes. Tim, any comments on that one?
Yeah, I think we need to spend a little time clarifying this some more too. But the what I'm reading here is it was approved and then implemented, and I'm not sure that it actually changed that much in that 10-year period. So I think there's two things here we're looking at. One is an approval, implementation at some later date, and or an approval, and then there's been some, significant changes because of a phasing element, or because there's been an additional work attached to the original work. So that latter one, I think we've got that one covered off. I'm not sure if we've got this one covered off, Erin,
Yes.
where it's simply been approved and then not implemented until some period later.
Yeah, so it'd have to show that it was substantially added to, so something has changed.
Yeah.
Not necessarily just sat on the shelf for a while and then went forward.
That's right.
So hopefully that answers your question, Tyson. So we have a couple more minutes if there's any other questions. As a reminder, online, don't forget to log your CPL units. Some people have a harder time getting them than others, so please log after the webinar, and then you won't be hearing from the APPI office that you haven't logged your webinar or your CPL units. So not seeing any other questions come in, we'll just like to thank everyone for participating today. As a reminder, this was our first webinar, so hopefully it went well. We thank everyone for participating. We would like to do some more webinars in the future. So if you have any suggestions for webinars or would like to host a webinar for the membership, please contact the APPI. I would be happy to organize that for you. And thank you everyone for participating, and thank you to Tim. And just a quick note from Beth, a note on CPL, where in there you have a way to go list of APPI things, but it is there. Yes, you do have to go down far. Sorry, there is a number of APPI items, so you will have to log down. So thank you, Beth, if you can put it in there automatically, it's in there. And we will try to keep doing these, and we will be sending out a survey about today's presentation, so please provide us any comments because then we can improve these webinars in the future. So thanks everyone, and big thanks, shout out for Tim for doing this with me today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone.